What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 350 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Batman Europa. This is a 4-issue miniseries that came out not that long ago. This is created by a hodgepodge of people. Several people were involved with the art. A couple people were doing the story. The story is by Matteo Casali and Brian Azzarello, with art by, I'm going to mispronounce one of these at least, and I apologize in advance, Giuseppe Camuncoli, Jim Lee, Diego Latorre, and Gerald Perel. Like I said, this is a 4-issue miniseries. Basically, the premise is Batman and the Joker have both simultaneously been poisoned with this virus that is going to kill them within a week. So they have to reluctantly work together to try and find a cure for this virus, and they have to figure out who has poisoned them and why they have been poisoned. And it's a pretty interesting premise because Batman and the Joker are obviously not two components that will work well together. They are pretty much diametrically opposed on everything. So it's really interesting getting to see them work together. And if you had told me this premise before I read it, because I didn't know anything about this before I started reading this. I didn't know the Joker was even going to be in it, and yeah, he is on the cover here, but the way it's covered, the way it's colored, I couldn't really see the Joker on there, and I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to the cover. I bought this kind of sight unseen, not really knowing anything about it, but I didn't know the Joker was going to be in it, and I did not know the premise of the story. If you had told me the premise of this story before I read it, I would have said, I don't know about that. I don't know about Batman and Joker working together. This book actually sells it for the most part, and it doesn't go too far. It doesn't have Batman say, the Joker is a worthy ally as much as he's a worthy adversary. Yesterday, whenever I was reading the Batman Green Hornet crossover, throughout that book, there were several times where Batman was saying, no, you guys would be really good crime fighters, and it's because secretly the Green Hornet and Kato are not evil, but they're pretending to be crime lords. Here, the Joker actually is evil, so you can't have these two actually become buddies throughout this story, even though they are working together. And there's a couple of times where there's at least one time where Joker saves Batman, and then there's one time where Batman saves the Joker. So you can't go so far where these two become friends and find some kind of level of kinship here. So by the end of the book, you have to believe that they were able to work together while still able to go their separate ways and still able to hate each other by the end of this story. And I think that this book achieves that, and I'm very impressed with that. Having said that, I don't think that this book is flawless. There are some things here that I didn't really like. Number one, I wish that we could have had one artist throughout this entire book. It's only 4 issues. It's not a very long story. If this was like a 12-issue maxi series, I could understand having several artists kick in at different points in the book, but this is 4 issues long. I don't know why we couldn't have just had Jim Lee or one of the other guys do the entire 4 issues. It's really inconsistent as far as art goes, and it's very jarring to me whenever I turn the page and suddenly it's a different artist doing the art. The first 2 issues are by Jim Lee and someone else doing the art layout. It's one of those guys that I mentioned earlier, but I think throughout all 4 issues, it's one guy doing the layout on all 4 issues, and then it's different artists doing the layout, or doing the the pencils and stuff on each issue. I think Jim Lee does the first 2 issues, and then there's 2 separate guys who do issue 3 and 4. And I think that Jim Lee is actually one of the better artists here, and I never thought that I would have said that. Nothing against Jim Lee, but I've never been a huge fan of his art. I don't think that it's very good. I think that he and several of the other guys who founded Image Comics, they all have very similar art styles, and I'm not really a fan of that style in general. But I think that Jim Lee's style here, it's very clear and concise. It's easy to tell what's going on. When you get to issue 3, it was very difficult for me to tell what was going on. At one point, the bad guy that these guys are trying to figure out who it is, he has these, I guess they're dogs, maybe they're cats, and they have skulls for faces, and I cannot tell what's going on in that panel. I looked at it for about a minute and a half, and finally I was able to say, maybe those are dogs with skull faces, maybe. I feel like that was kind of what was going on throughout that entire issue. It was really difficult for me to tell what was going on in that issue. And then in issue 4, it's not as bad. It's a little easier to tell what's going on there, but it's not quite as clear and concise as Jim Lee's artwork. And even if this wasn't Jim Lee, even if it was an artist who I'm not a fan of, let's say Sam Keith, I talked about him a couple of days ago when I was talking about Batman Through the Looking Glass, even if Sam Keith had done the first 2 issues and then you had these other guys, I would have been fine with that. Let's get one artist to do all 4 issues. It's not like this is an ongoing series like Batman or Detective Comics where you get a different artist from issue 750 to 751, because obviously we can't expect one artist to do all 751 issues of Detective Comics. I get that. this is a 4-issue miniseries. There's really no excuse to have this many artists involved with this book. And if it was something like a big jam session where each page is done by a different artist, then I could get behind that because that has some kind of artistic merit to it. But I don't like that we have 2 issues by Jim Lee and then the last 2 issues are done by somebody else. It really feels like Jim Lee was just so busy doing something else that he had to leave in the middle of this book, and that makes it seem like Jim Lee didn't care that much about this book. And I like this book. I wish that we could have gotten an artist who does care about this a little bit more than what it seems like Jim Lee did. Other than that, let's talk a little bit about the story. Like I said, this book does a really good job of the partnership between the Joker and the Batman, not taking it too far, but making it believable that these two would want to work together under these circumstances. The mystery villain here, this is mysterious in that we don't know who the villain is, but this is not a mystery story because this is not giving us any clues as to who the bad guy is. It is somebody that we know. It is someone from the Batman series, I guess you could say, but it's not giving us any clues as to who it is throughout this book. It just kind of, at the last... I guess the last act of the book, it's somewhere in the last issue where we find out who has poisoned the Joker and Batman, and it doesn't really give you any lead up to that reveal. It's not an actual mystery story. The bad guy, his identity is mysterious, but it's not a mystery story in that it doesn't play fair in giving you the clues to try and figure it out before the reveal comes in. That's a big deal for me. Anytime I read a mystery story, I feel like it really should try to play fair with the audience and giving them the information that they need so that if they want to, they can solve the mystery. This book doesn't do that, but I don't think that it's really trying to do that either. This is more of a globe-trotting adventure story than it is a mystery story. It just so happens that the bad guy is mysterious, but I don't think that they were really trying to do a mystery story here, so that doesn't bother me that much. Also, the bad guy, without spoiling who it is, their modus operandi here, the reason that they poison Batman is because they're a Batman bad guy, so they want to get rid of Batman, obviously, but then the reason that they poison the Joker is because they specifically want to teach Batman a lesson. They want to say, you cannot live without the Joker. If the Joker dies, so do you. That's kind of a little bit of a spoiler for the last issue, but I don't think that's as big of a spoiler as some of the other stuff here, so I'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit. But basically, we find out in the last issue that the antidote for both of these guys is in the other one's blood. And in fact, that might even kind of be spoiled on the first page, because the very first page, Batman is saying something about, here we are, me and the Joker, my blood on his lips, his blood on my lips, something really gross and kind of sexual. It's a little weird how that gets towards the beginning of this book and then the very end of this book. But anyway, we find out in issue 4 that the antidote is in each other's blood. So Batman has to drink Joker's blood and Joker has to drink Batman's blood. It's weird, okay? I've already said that. But anyway, basically Batman is told that without the Joker, he is nothing. He has to have the Joker alive in order for himself to be alive. That's a little strange, and I don't entirely agree with that premise. No, I don't think that Batman is ever going to kill the Joker, at least not in a story that's in continuity, but I don't agree with the premise that without an arch nemesis, Batman is nothing. If the Joker died of cancer tomorrow, Batman wouldn't just cease to exist. He still has other Batman villains who would take up his time. You've got characters like Two-Face and the Riddler, and then the Ventriloquist and Bane, other characters, Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze. Those guys would take up his time. It's not like Batman would just hang up his cowl if the Joker died tomorrow. So it's a little weird that the villain of this book is saying, without Joker, you are nothing. That's kind of strange because I feel like without all of his villains, he's nothing, but whenever you specifically signal out one particular villain, that doesn't really work as far as an analogy goes. It's a kind of cool concept with both of these characters needing each other to survive in this story, but I don't think that it works thematically like this book thinks that it does. Also, whenever Batman is considering it, for a hot second he thinks maybe if I let the Joker die and I die, then everything will be alright, but then the Joker kind of takes it out of his hands and says, nope, I'm going to go ahead and save both of our lives. I was a little confused about what was going on, and that kind of goes back to the art not being super clear here, where I'm not sure what's going on. I assume that both of them have to drink the other's blood, but then what if Batman drank Joker's blood, but then didn't let Joker drink any of his own blood? What if Batman was feeling especially bloodthirsty, no pun intended, and he said, you know what, I'm going to save myself, but I'm not going to let you save your own life, so I'm going to drink your blood, and then I'm going to keep you from drinking mine. What if that happened? The way that Batman is acting here, he's acting like he has to save Joker's life if he's going to save his own, or neither of them will survive. It's basically one of those two situations. situations, there's no way that Batman can live without the Joker. And that's a little weird, and I don't entirely understand how they saved each other's lives because, again, the art was not very clear. Overall, I think that this book is good. I don't know if it's as good as I was expecting it to be. I don't really know what I was expecting whenever I got this. I was expecting something totally different, though. But anyway, I think it is a good book. I don't think it's in the top 10 Batman stories. I haven't really heard anyone talk about this book, but I suspect a lot of people really liked it because you got some high-profile creators here, Brian Azzarello and Jim Lee especially. Those guys are really loved by most comic book fans, so I suspect a lot of people liked the story more than I did. I thought it was all right. I would even go so far as to say it's pretty good. It's just not great or fantastic. So anyway, those are my thoughts on Batman Europa. I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.